Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Virtual Office Hours. Just a few quick notes before we get started. First, I'll be live in the different streaming platforms, so feel free to chat with me or chat with one another. I know that you will, but of course, please be respectful of all members of the Colburn community. If you have any feedback about this event or things you would like to see in the future, please feel free to email me at parents@colburnschool.edu. Thank you for joining us and enjoy the show. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Virtual Office Hours. I'm Michelle Yamamoto, the Manager of Alumni and Parent Relations here at the Colburn School. So Virtual Office Hours is our current iteration of the Office Hours series, which is a monthly pop-up for the entire community to come together. It normally takes place on Colburn Plaza, but we're virtual for the rest of this year. We also normally do this usually like the last weekend of the month, but this month and next month are going to be pushed up a little bit due to the holiday breaks that are right around the corner. And I'll go over all of those dates in just a minute when we go over the calendar. But this month, we are paying special attention to the way that technology has impacted our programming, our campus, and the performing arts more generally. We've got great interviews with faculty and staff. Brian Langsbard, who's teaching music technology courses in the Conservatory and Community School, gives us his take on it. We also spoke with Gavin, Kelley, and Sarah Lakey in the dance office about the virtual dance studio and everything going on in that world. Our AV manager, Francesco Perlangeli, is going to give us a quick overview of some of the technological updates that have taken place on campus. And we'll also catch a short video from the LA Opera on the work that we just did with them for their production of The Anonymous Lover. As usual, we'll start this session with a performance. Earlier this month, we premiered a new work from Apsara Kasaraman, a young composer in the Community School of Performing Arts. Musical Mentors Collaborative invited Apsara to write this composition for their project, Requiem 20, a musical response to the COVID-19 pandemic. They asked 11 young composers to write a piece of music about the way the pandemic made them feel, and this is Apsara's input to that. So please enjoy Requiem for Four Horns. Thank you so much, Apsara, for allowing us to share that with the Colburn community. Now, I know that we're still in November, but I wanted to give a quick recap of the month so far. We hosted our first parent info session on Suzuki at Colburn, and it was very, very successful. If anyone is interested in learning more about our Suzuki programs or registered but wasn't able to attend, you can watch a recording of the presentations at colburnschool.edu/parents. I can also share the follow-up information that we sent out if you send me a reminder at my email at parents@colburnschool.edu. Violist Nobuko Imai led a virtual masterclass for our students across the school. The LA Opera premiered its production of The Anonymous Lover in partnership with Colburn, and you can still view that performance online as well. I'll share a link on our office hours page as well as in the comments below. The conservatory hosted their internal performance and chamber forums this past week just for their students and faculty. And of course, the community school continues to host its Friday night recitals for their students and families. So that is November to this point. Now let's take a look at December. So this is December at Colburn. First, I want to remind everyone that this calendar will be available on the website on our parents page at colburnschool.edu/parents, as well as on the office hours page, which is colburnschool.edu/office hours. I also want to point out that Colburn will be in Thanksgiving break Wednesday, November 25th through Sunday, November 29th, and I have those dates for the breaks listed on the left-hand side here. So our Tune-In Tuesdays will continue for the foreseeable future. That is your bite-sized bit of performance at lunchtime every Tuesday, so keep an eye out for those. For students that are applying, Conservatory of Music applications will be due Tuesday, December 1st. On Saturday, December 5th, we'll have our second parent info session on early childhood pathways. Just a reminder that registration is required for this. So you can do so at colburnschool.edu/parents. And this is for families that are either currently enrolled in early childhood or preparing to enroll in early childhood and want to know what the next step is once your student ages out of the program. We'll have faculty from a variety of programs giving short presentations and answering questions, so I hope you can join us for that. That Saturday is also the beginning of our third and final chapter of musical minuettos for the year. These are our 3 to 4 week mini classes for early childhood families, and you can learn more about the topics and register for the classes at colburnschool.edu/earlychildhood. On December 7th, spring registration opens in the Community School of Performing Arts for continuing students for early childhood and adult students. That gold bar running across the middle of our screen is 12 Days of Colburn. Normally there's a lot going on in December, so every day for 12 days, beginning Thursday, December 10th, we'll be sharing bite-sized treats and premiering performances to help brighten our remaining days before winter break, and more importantly, before we say goodbye to 2020. Our next virtual office hours falls on December 19th, so it will be a part of 12 Days of Colburn. And this next event will be our 2020 winter concert, so it will be entirely dedicated to performances from students across the school. I'm very excited to share these performances with you. I hope you can join us. The Colburn Artist Series will continue on December 20th. This will also fall under our 12 Days of Colburn, and this will feature the Viano String Quartet, which you can watch at 7 p.m. on Facebook, YouTube, or our live streaming page on the website. And finally, winter break stretches from Monday, December 21st through Sunday, January 3rd of 2021. There will be no classes, and I hope you enjoy your break. An update on the Colburn holiday tree. Thank you to all the families that donated an ornament. It looks lovely. The trees are on view at South Coast Plaza from now until December 4th, which is when the auction closes. I will include a link to that page here in the comments as well as on the office hours and parents pages, so you can go take a look at all of the close-ups of our tree and some of the other trees in the auction. Now let's watch another short performance by Suzuki guitar senior Maggie Grether, performing The Girl with the Flaxen Hair by Claude Debussy. Brian Langsbard is a film and television composer with over 25 years of experience, including 2 Emmy nominations and an ASCAP Screen Music Award. A native Angelino, Brian graduated from the Eastman School of Music before returning right back home to begin working on Batman the Animated Series. He became the primary composer for Major League Baseball productions for several years. Last year, he scored the Will Ferrell comedy Ferrell Takes the Field for HBO, and he recently finished scoring a 4-part documentary series on the Smithsonian Channel. Brian is also an educator, teaching courses on music technology in both the Conservatory of Music and the Community School of Performing Arts right here at Colburn, and he joins us today to talk a little bit about music and technology. Welcome, Brian.
Thank you. Good to be here.
So how is the fall semester going so far for you, teaching in both of those units virtually?
I think considering this fall and everything that's been, going on in the world, which definitely affects students and educators on a sliding scale, it's going great. We're still teaching, and the students are still learning. And yeah, that being said, it's the classes are going really well. This particular, I teach music production on the software platform known as Logic, and there are parts of that lend itself very well to virtual teaching. So this semester, I guess I'm thinking, because I taught it over the summer as well, I'm thinking like, oh, it's not the first semester, but it actually is the first semester I've been doing virtual teaching. So that plus the summer school, it has gone really, really well, actually. So it's been kind of a surprisingly good experience.
Do you feel like fall has been a little bit, I mean, I don't know what your summer was like, but do you feel like fall feels a little bit more settled, I guess, than maybe teaching in summer did?
I mean, in some ways, I'm constantly tweaking the class and refining it and just trying to make it more efficient or more fun or less of a technological drag, because there are elements of just the file transfers and everybody listening to something at the same time that can be really difficult, and there's new technologies in that world coming out all the time. um, Summer had a different feel to it because it was summer, and the start of the fall had a different feel to it. But mid fall, really, I felt like we really had to push through, obviously, again, just what was going on in the world, what we're all dealing with. And really, my hat's off to all the students and all the educators out there who are, we just blaze through it. We're here to just step away from what's going on and get online and learn something and have some fun doing it as well.
Yeah, definitely a big hats off all around to every educator that has been forced to just throw all of their curriculum online. It's not been easy. I've heard from a number of friends that are in the field.
Yeah, yeah.
Can you talk a little bit more about your class in the classes in the conservatory and your classes in the community school, kind of how they differ and how they're structured, like what they cover?
Yeah, I mean, they're actually it's actually a very similar course. Even though the level of musicianship is quite different between conservatory students and the CSPA students, but um, they're all pretty much beginners on Logic. Very, very few of them have had any real experience on the software. So for both classes, for both levels of, for both schools, I suppose, we start at the very, very beginning of what the software does. And for these students in particular, the conservatory students, we focus heavily on recording yourself and producing yourself and your instrument in Logic. For CSPA, I do get some, very young songwriter, composer, producer types. So then we delve a little bit more into Logic's ensemble production and virtual production. So, you know, these times right now where it's just not possible to have your friend come over and play bass or guitar or sing, you can go into Logic and one person can sing somewhere else, but you've got all of these virtual instruments available to you in Logic, that we can use, and some of them are exploring very modern popular music. So there's synthesizers and drum machines and all of that fun stuff in there that we sometimes touch on in the CSPA course if there's enough students who are really into it.
I mean, I know that the conservatory is limited obviously to like college age conservatory students. In the community school, um, do you have adult students? Is this sort of like open generally, or do they tend to skew very young? Like if
I've
I were
had
considering it, would I be a weird fit?
No, not at all. The course is open. The CSPA course is called Introduction to Logic, and it is open to all ages. I do tend to get like, I think I have a minimum age of maybe 13 or 14, um, but I tend to have mostly aged like 15 to 20 or so. But I've had the occasional like adult, and I have had more occasionally other faculty members, adults, who are in my who take my classes. So because they need to see how logic can work for them in their teaching, or how to expose their students to it.
That's especially true right now, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Um, do the students end up working on projects together, or is it everybody sort of comes in with their own idea of what they want to, like the final product or the final project to be, and then they deliver it, or is it very collaborative?
Well, we start with just, getting a good product, recording yourself into Logic, and it sounds a lot easier than it is, and we have to take into a lot of external effects. For example, a problem that a lot of these students have is they might live, in a high-rise building over a major street, and there's sirens go by, delivery trucks, construction noise. Um, Sometimes their room is just, it's just angled in such a way, and we actually figure out like where they should be in their room so that sound isn't reverberating so much, and it doesn't have this like weird echoey boxy sound when they record. um, Wi-Fi connectivity is a big issue across all the different stages. Some students, I that might be the same for a CSPA student as it might be for a conservatory student. But after we get to students recording themselves and we get a good product there, then we move into a collaboration where we find a piece that I may look at the class and be like, okay, cool, we've got a cellist, a violinist, and a pianist here. Let's find a trio that they can collaborate on, and then we move into um, them recording their individual parts and then putting it together, and we see like, okay, what does it take to be able to record just yourself and then after the fact be applied into an ensemble. And there's a very specific skill set involved that you know unfortunately really doesn't use anything you've learned from playing in an ensemble on a stage. It's an entirely new skill set. But they're definitely getting it, and probably one of the biggest joys of this class is it's always a very short. I mean the CSPA class is only 6 classes, and we usually burn through it in 2 or 3 weeks. But I mean they come into it not knowing anything about the software, never having recorded themselves, and come out of it with a really good ensemble recording, and that's fun to see them enjoying that.
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, I like that you mentioned too that even for like some of the more maybe like seasoned performers in the conservatory, the act of performing on stage together is a very different skill set than coordinating across, you know, digital lines and, you know, trying to sync up audio and things like that. Can you talk a little bit more about the skills that students are acquiring in these courses that are going to continue to support them even when, you know, we go back to in-person instruction and performance? I imagine like just being able to speak the language is going to be
Yeah.
useful in certain setups going forward.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this is the thing about this class that I've noticed is that, some students really take to it and they just want to, it's very interesting to see that there is a skill for using a computer that is just like a talent. Just like some people can pick up piano and others just can't, as some people can just get into a computer, and it's so mind-blowing to me when I see a student who is just light years ahead on Logic, doing everything, turning in projects with all of this stuff that I didn't even talk about. And I'm like, oh, so you've been using Logic for a while now, haven't you? And they're like, no, I'm just been poking around on my free time. And that's wild, to see. But on the flip side, there are students who have never been exposed to Apple computers, which has been a bit of a problem. Sometimes I have students, often a big question is, I don't have a Mac. And unfortunately, my answer is, then you can't take this class. This software only runs on a Mac. And, for better or for worse, it's the most popular recording platform. So I don't want to teach kids how to work in something where then finally they find themselves trying to collaborate with people and they can't. Right. So the other thing is that yeah, I mean, the pandemic has forced those who never wanted to or didn't think about using their computer to record themselves into having to use their computer to record themselves. The good news is that when the pandemic is over, this skill set and this technology and being able to do this, it's not like it's no longer needed. Yeah, you'll go back to playing on stage, but now you know how to record yourself at home. You've opened yourself up to literally an entirely new universe of opportunities, collaborations, artistic relationships with other people that go beyond just music. It might be, I would hope it would be film. We were talking a little bit about, the dance, school at Colburn, and the way, even if we're forced to do this right now during a pandemic, you might be forced in the future that you move to another state, or the person you're working with moves somewhere, or it's just vacation, and vacation crept up before you could finish a project and now you need to finish it remotely. the I think you're going to see, as a result of this pandemic, an explosion of online artistry in music, if you haven't seen it already, because so many people are using this time, to hone these skills and to learn this craft and technology.
Yeah. So would you say that Logic is like the industry standard, basically, if you're talking about recording?
I mean, there's Logic and there's Pro Tools, and getting into it, there seems to be a choice. Like, oh, do I get Logic or Pro Tools? Well, the first issue is that while Pro Tools does work on a PC, I still have yet to, in my life, ever see someone using Pro Tools on a PC. I only see it running on a Mac. And ultimately, the two do both Logic and Pro Tools do the same thing but differently, such that by the time you get to a point, if it becomes part of your actual career, you're just going to learn both. You're going to get both and you're going to learn both. Once you know Logic, there's things you pick up a lot quicker in Pro Tools, and vice versa. Then after those two pieces of software, there are others, and there are others that are very popular. There's one called Cubase, which actually is the most popular cross-platform, DAW, as they're called. DAW stands for Digital Audio Workstation. Cubase runs on PC, Cubase runs on a Mac. So if I would say, if I was going to teach another piece of software, that would be the next one that I would want to teach, because I feel like, although it's a little more specialty, being cross-platform, it can, be a little more accepted. But yeah, Logic is pretty much the number one, software we're going to go with for now.
Yeah, that makes sense. I feel like I've always heard Logic and Pro Tools kind of first and foremost, so that makes a lot of sense. Yeah. Going back to sort of teaching virtually and the challenges that arise with that, can you talk about what it's been like for you, but also maybe try to tie in things that you think would be helpful for students to understand in the prompt, things that maybe they didn't even expect to deal with or counter?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, it's funny. I remember with in-person teaching, it's funny as a teacher, you just immediately hone in on the one student who's nodding off, you know, and you're just like, oh, why can't I get them to like stay focused, and it's probably out of my control. They probably didn't sleep, and then I've seen the same over Zoom. You see 12 kids and you see one student who's like that, or the student who's just frozen the whole time and their eyelids are down. And it's like i do I do wish there was a way I could let these students know, like, hey, there's something going on externally outside of this class that's keeping you from being present. It needs to be addressed, because I can tell very quickly when students are not picking up the material. The method by which I teach the class is, it's just like we're talking right now. We don't have Logic open during the class. I have it on my screen. I show, the students, and I want there to be like an engagement between myself and the students as I'm showing things on Logic. But I record the whole class, and every single homework assignment is to watch the class again, watch the recording while having Logic open up on your computer, so that you start to sort of get this muscle memory going of what's happening, on the screen, uh, outside of the class itself. The only other thing that has been interesting, on a real technical level, sort of in relation to, I think, answering your question, is that students are having, different levels of capabilities with respect to their internet speeds. I think we've gotten used to the idea that, like, oh, I can just be on my phone upstairs in my room and I'll use the Wi-Fi, even though the router is in the living room downstairs. And it's like, that bottleneck is getting to a point now where, like, I get a lot of frozen Zoom and we can't hear what's going on. So, like, ideally, we need an Ethernet cable plugged into your desktop computer, and then, we can really go to work, collaborating and hearing each other and seeing each other with the music.
Yeah, it's so true. I don't know how many times I've been in meetings and it's just been like staring at frozen faces, either because my Wi-Fi went down or someone else's Wi-Fi went down.
Right.
So
Yeah.
yeah, it definitely
Yeah.
holds up the process. I wanted to know, so I think that you've mentioned you're teaching courses in the spring. Are they basically going to be like similar to the 6-week course I think you said that you're teaching?
It's 6 classes that we do. We used to, I think over the summer, we did them pretty one after another. So we did 3 classes a week. So we were done in 2 weeks. But during the school year, that's a little too aggressive. So we then spread it out to 2 classes a week. So it takes 3 weeks to go through the 6 classes. Yeah, I teach an introduction to Logic class. I have another class called, like a next level or intermediate Logic, that I've only taught once over the summer because enough students from the beginning class expressed an interest. They wanted to continue. So we just created the course and we continued. I'm finding that during the school year, the students are a little more pressured to be doing other things. The summer course felt particularly like the students, I could tell the students were spending hours with the software in between classes. With when I'm teaching this course during the school year, I can tell sometimes that the students are not able to open up Logic for a minute in between classes. And I tell them on day one, it's an instrument. It's a new musical instrument. If you don't practice it, you're not going to get good at it at all.
Yeah, that makes sense though, because I guess during the semester it feels like there are many other urgent priorities popping up. So
Yeah.
it's too bad, but I'm glad that you're teaching it in spring, and I'll make sure to share that information at the end of this interview too.
Yeah.
So in closing, I just wanted to get your thoughts on this is a strange time for everyone, and everything is still, things are sort of like opening up and then closing back down, and there's a lot of uncertainty. But what do you think that musicians and just sort of performers generally should be thinking about right now while these stages are dark? Because it's sort of having that imagination to reimagine what it could be to be a performing artist in the future is
Yeah.
kind of in their hands right now.
So really, when I think about it, the more I think about the question, the more I think how unqualified I am to answer it, because
Oh,
it really goes to a place of like mental health, because you have to think about everything you're missing from not being on stage and collaborating in person with people, which quite frankly, even during non-pandemic times, I don't have that in my job. Whether I'm teaching virtually or working on films or TV or any other projects, I'm in here by myself most of the time. Only on the occasion that I get to go to a studio and record with an ensemble do I get to work with musicians. So the musicians who are right now used to every day almost being on a stage with others, that I think using, obviously, this platform to explore virtual collaboration, at the very least keeps you honing in on those skills and sharpening those abilities that really are so different, but at least in the same world. When you record yourself, and you're recording to an ensemble, you still have to play in time, and you still have to really think hard about your intonation and a couple other things, like you have to be careful about your movements. You have to make sure you don't tap your foot. If you kick that mic stand during your best performance, you just ruined your best performance. So these are the new skills. But yeah, that's it is a really tough thing for me to think. I think what this makes me think about it, believe it or not, I think getting some real like sunshine, physical exercise, those are actually the things that can bring you back to being more healthily creative in these closed rooms with a microphone and a computer screen.
Like a sense of like you're giving yourself a little refresh or reboot, I guess. It's super important right now. Yeah. Well, thank you. This has been a really fascinating conversation. Good luck with the rest of fall semester and spring. And
thank you.
Yeah. For those of you that are curious as to what's coming out of Brian's class, here's a very quick sneak peek of the final project that some of his students are working on now. You'll be able to hear the full audio in December during our 12 Days of Colburn campaign. And now we're going to turn to dance and see what's been going on at the Trudl Zipper Dance Institute. Okay, so I'm here today with Gavin, Kelley, and Sarah Lakey in the dance office. And for those watching that aren't already very familiar with you, I was wondering if you could just give a short intro, name, sort of your title, and what you do at school.
Sarah, do you want to go first?
You go, Gavin.
Okay. My name is Gavin Kelley. I am the manager of operations here at the Colburn School in the dance program.
Thank you.
And my name is Sarah Lakey, and I work with dance projects and enrollments here at Colburn.
And since oddly enough, I am joining you for your virtual office hours, which are very different than my virtual office hours, is there anything you want to say about like what students and parents might expect from your virtual office hours, and maybe like the normal times that they run and when they can find you there?
Sure. We right now we have the virtual office hours every Wednesday from 2:30 to 3:30. And it's just a time where parents or students or even faculty members can stop in and ask questions or even just say hello, since there's less face-to-face time these days, obviously. And in between visitors, Gavin and I can check in with one another and get work done. So
Very functional and efficient. I like it.
Mhm.
So this session of my office hours is on sort of technology and how it's really touching on all parts of the school right now. And I've spoken with Brian Langsbard, who does some of the music and tech courses in the community school and the conservatory. But I was wondering if you two could talk about sort of the technological considerations that dance has had to deal with, and what sort of challenges it's brought your way.
Gavin, do you want me to start?
Yeah, yeah, that's a good way. I'm like, and my screen is like you're on top, so I'm figuring like we'll go like that.
Okay, that's great. So, I mean, obviously Zoom was, Zoom, which is what we use for our dance classes, was set up as a platform for meetings. It certainly was not set up as a platform for, dance and movement classes. So there's certainly been some challenges along the way. In part with our TAP classes. Zoom is designed to filter out any kind of background noise for meetings. And for a teacher who's trying to demonstrate tap, a few moments into them tapping, the sound gets cut off. So obviously at this point we have found workarounds for that, but we've basically had to take a system like Zoom that is not designed for dance classes and find a way to make it work. And a lot of that has just been about managing sound and helping students with framing their cameras, so that teachers can see the students clearly. And part of that is also just making this Zoom dance experience as personal as possible, so that the students really feel like the teachers can see them and that there's feedback and there's interaction. So there's lots of elements of challenges beyond that, but I'll finish there for now.
I think one of the positives that's come out of the remote learning is some of the teachers are expressing to us, at least, that they're able to pay attention to more details because they're looking at it. Some of our classes have up to 16 students, so they have to look at each student one at a time. And also the student is dancing in a more constrained space. So it's sort of now about the details when it comes to technical correction. So the challenges are real, but there are some plus sides to this. I mean, of course, one of the great pluses is we can have students in Canada, New York, Illinois,
Oregon, Ohio.
Yeah, so we're able to get students from around the country at this point. So that's really great, and I guess actually internationally too. Now that students are zooming in from Canada.
That is awesome. Yeah, it's a great way to sort of create additional access for a program like this. I think it's interesting that you actually point out, I wouldn't have even thought about it, but I guess if you were in an actual studio with all the students, you wouldn't even necessarily have the same angle on all of them. So I think it's interesting to think about maybe processing everyone in the same angle at the same time individually. That must make for like a very different experience. I think, Sarah, you'd mentioned something about the sound being an issue and some of the workarounds, and I don't know how technical the answer might be, but can you talk about what some of those workarounds have actually been?
Yeah, for the TAP classes, I think it was actually as simple as going into the advanced audio settings and disabling the filtering out background noise. So some of them are sort of simple experimentation, to work around things that Zoom is designed to do that would help in a meeting but hinder us with dance. And then obviously the other element is when we made the decision to have our live accompanists and drummers play for classes, which initially we thought just wouldn't even work. Again, Zoom is not designed for these types of scenarios. The musicians have played around with some different, as time has gone by over the last few months, Zoom has come out with some more advanced audio settings to help with those types of scenarios. I think the most recent one was an HD, forget the name of it, I can look it up, but there's a recent advanced sound update that helped sort of clarify the sound quality and any of the lag in the quality, or sometimes the breaking up of the sound quality. So basically researching and taking advantage of every kind of more advanced sound setting for the musicians has been one of the biggest ones. And then just from sort of noise management, the other element is from the beginning making sure that students are muted as they come in, and then figuring out specifically how to ask one person at a time a question, because otherwise if you have even 3 people talking at once on Zoom, it's chaos. So from the dance standpoint, the main element of sound quality control is making sure that everyone's muted and one person speaks at a time. But we've even found sound settings that helped allow the teacher to speak while the accompanist is playing. So we've done a lot of tweaking with the sound settings to help us out.
Oh my gosh, that sounds really complicated, actually. I mean, I'm like really amazed that you have live accompaniment and dance at the same time. I would love to see how that plays out.
You should definitely come into one of our classes. I think one thing that needs to be said about like the chairs and the deans, so Kelley, Ann, Tamsin, Denise, and Jennifer and James, is they've also adjusted the curriculum. And this is more so evident in TAP, because it would be really difficult to have a full 90-minute TAP class with these settings. And in the very beginning, before we were able to make these adjustments with Zoom, the TAP classes, we had to cut them down from whether they were a 90-minute class or a 60-minute class down to 30 minutes. What we've done now, like today, for instance, we still have a 90-minute block scheduled for TAP, but the first 30 minutes is a ballet bar class. So they get their warm up doing that. And then once they're warm, they join, the faculty switches out, the accompanist switches out, and they're joined by TAP faculty.
So it's basically, it's also like changed the structure of a lot of the course offerings then too.
It has. We've adapted to what the strengths of Zoom are, particularly to meet our needs and so just to meet our needs. So we've always felt that ballet and modern and jazz dance, for instance, are integral parts of a TAP curriculum, but now we're using those as tools as part of a TAP class. And so a TAP student, like a TAP 3 student, starts today at 4 o'clock, so 4 to 4:30, ballet bar, and then from 4:30 to 5:30, they have their TAP class. So this way, it's not 90 minutes of this adjusted class that Sarah was talking about.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's really smart, obviously, because living in a screen is not always that. Like the translation isn't quite as direct from just taking a class in person to a class online, even if you make a lot of accommodations for it.
And I just wanted to chime in real quick in terms of the perfecting the audio has been a team effort. I mean, from the very beginning, we did a lot of beta testing, with the accompanists, and each one of us trying to research and figure out and test what would work. There's been so many different settings, I can't even remember all of them, but we have documents that I can send you of sort of the best practices, and it's different sound settings, sometimes for TAP classes than it is for ballet classes. We've gotten even that specific with them.
Oh my gosh, I would actually, like, the nerd in me would like love to see the process as it unfolded. I'm curious, you'd mentioned that this is sort of like, it's not open access, but it's opening access for a lot of people. And you've mentioned international students across the country. Can you talk about are there new offerings for these students? Are they just students that were already enrolled in the programs that you're helping to adapt into the virtual setting? Or is there's curriculum that's open to all?
Well, we have the adult open classes that Colburn was offering previously, I think with a more robust schedule when we were able to be in person. Right now we have 4 open adult classes a week. And those are all virtual, so someone could technically take those from anywhere. And then as far as, there's been a few other students who have been able to join us from afar, that, normally are not based in LA. And then there's also a couple, I believe, that are planning on moving to LA and joining us full time once we open. And so they've started with us virtually.
So there are some students that are new to Colburn in the virtual experience.
Yeah.
Are they all in ballet, or is it pretty diverse?
Mostly ballet. And
I think so. I think there's like one modern student who's visiting family in France right now, if I'm not mistaken. But yeah, I mean, and as you know, like in the past, like our dance academy, we had up to 22 students last year and the year before. But give or take, I think the margin of error with my brain is probably 4 students. But we had housing here, so we were able to have students reside here. So currently, Zoom is allowing us to reach the students who would be residents here while they're at home. And of course, there are other students in other states have different restrictions and different career goals or different time. I guess there are different places in their training, so they might stay in their home state and train in their home state with the hope of joining us in the future at an audition, which is, the date is not set yet for our audition for next year.
Yeah, in case anyone's wondering, not yet.
Not yet.
Okay, well, that's all interesting. That's interesting. I want to like pivot a little bit to sort of more like broad themes, I guess. So while everything is still remote, I imagine there are certain skills that these dancers are picking up that they wouldn't necessarily have picked up in an in-person class. And I was wondering if you could share your thoughts on that and like the utility of these skills, like how it might serve them once we're actually back in person again.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a couple ways of looking at that. And one is from the dancer technical standpoint. Obviously, if you're dancing from a kitchen or a living room, you can't do, big travel movement or a lot of jumping or maybe even not a lot of turning, but you can focus on other elements of technique and really refine some of the basis or structure, on which to build later. So I feel like as the dancers return to the studio, they might find that they're a lot stronger on their legs in ways in which they weren't before. And then it might take some time to get, bigger jumping type movements back. But I think a lot of them are finding that in sort of more of the structural technique basis, they're gaining strength in ways that they wouldn't have otherwise. Some teachers have found that some of the more reserved or shyer students who tend to kind of hide out in the back of the classroom have come forth and found a bit more expressiveness in their movement because it's kind of just them alone-ish in their space. And I also think there's a resiliency, piece, that strength and will that it takes to show up every day and dance from home in front of a screen is a life skill that, I think can be very frustrating in the moment, but, making that choice time and time again to keep coming back to your art and finding ways to stay connected with, our fellow artists, it is a form of resiliency for them to take with them forward.
Yeah, I think it really can't be understated, the resilience that everyone is learning in this year. So yeah, I'm glad you pointed that out. I don't know, Gavin, did you have a follow-up thought to that?
I mean, the only thing I can think of speaks to maybe students are becoming a little more aware of camera angles and the technical aspects. So while that may not translate to the studio when they return to in-person studio, it can translate into their professional careers when they start auditioning for films, perhaps, or television, and also speak to just having the language to be able to speak to film directors and TV directors, because a lot of times when people are trained just in the performing arts or trained just in the film arts, there's this aspect that's lost in translation. So hopefully this helps this period helps with that gap that performing artists might sometimes have, and they can then share their vision a little better with the film artists who might not be as familiar with the performing arts.
Yeah, Brian mentioned something very similar for musicians in sort of the audio space and being able to speak the language of maybe someone who's producing their album or who's doing sound design in the hall that they're performing at. So interesting to see, like even performers that are maybe were a little bit hesitant to open up to technology or just sort of being thrown thrown into them now, but it's going to have this sort of this net benefit. Well, they'll have that extra language to be able to deal with. In terms of dance, sort of as a whole, this is a very big question. How do you see dance changing? Do you see it changing as a result of all of the technological changes that had to happen? I know that Blake Langsbard, who I interviewed for the podcast, was talking about, his ballet project OC. They were thinking about doing like drive-in ballets and sort of alternative forms of sharing the media. Do you see this, or how do you see this changing dance in the future once we are not virtual anymore?
Yeah, I mean, I think because people are being forced to find creative ways to still keep dance performances happening, and obviously not just with dance, but with theater and music. I think there will be some new and creative ways or performance venues that are presented. And I think those might appeal to some people who aren't necessarily as interested in, a traditional night at the theater. So I think there are some outdoor type venues that can present dance in a creative or maybe even more interactive way that could be interesting for people to continue to explore moving forward and to tap into audiences that maybe they normally wouldn't. I would also imagine that with more of the dance film projects that are going on, that you'll see more and more dance films happening in the future. I mean, there's, some that have been going on in the past, but I would be surprised if there's not more of an explosion of dance films as we move forward too.
I definitely think that this period is going to obviously impact the arts and the, culture as we know it. And, by training this way, it's my belief and hope that we grow from it and become stronger. What I'm kind of most interested in is seeing like the first time there's like a pas de deux on stage and seeing how that will impact the audience, because we're probably all hungry for touch, and then seeing that, it's probably going to really move an audience in ways that probably we may have taken for granted in the past.
And I think likewise for dancers themselves, that first moment when they're able to be back in the studio and to actually have that real sense of collaboration, because for so many dancers, it's about being a part of something that's bigger than just you, right? And so that's a lot harder to do from home with a screen. So I think dancers as well, when they're able to come back into the studio, will have an entirely new appreciation for their art form.
Yeah, I mean, I almost feel like it's going to be this catalyst for so much creativity in the performing arts space generally. Like once people can actually get back to, I think maybe what drove them in the first place into the art. So very, very excited to see how that plays out for dance, especially. So we've zoomed out a lot to talk about kind of dance generally. I kind of want to zoom back in and see if there's anything that you can share with us about some of the projects going on in the Trudl Zipper Dance Institute, what we can sort of expect in the coming weeks, months, maybe the next semester even.
Do you want me to touch on the virtual Nutcracker that we're working on? And this sort of ties in with one of your earlier questions too, in terms of, what are some of the advantages of dancing virtually like this? And one of them is we're able to work with guest artists from across the country or potentially even across the world who maybe normally wouldn't have the time or availability to come to LA. So we've been able to take advantage of that in a number of ways, including working with Silas Farley, who is, doing some choreography with the Dance Academy as part of the virtual Nutcracker. And for them to be able to work with Silas every week has just, been an incredible opportunity for them that we normally wouldn't have had if we weren't virtual. But with that said, the sort of one of the main focus right now for the different dance departments is putting together this virtual Nutcracker that all of the students are involved in, that will be creating a dance film based on essentially the students filming themselves doing choreography that the chairs have worked on them with, all within the theme of Nutcracker. So it's going to be a new experiment for all of us, but exciting and challenging and thrilling, hopefully.
So yeah, it's going to be, I assume it's going to be like a professionally produced film is sort of what we're looking out for.
So we're going to have professional editors helping us with the process, but obviously we can't have professional, camera persons in people's homes. So the actual capture of the dancing will essentially be parents with their iPhones. And those will be submitted to, I think we're going to end up having, 3 or 4 editors working on the project collaboratively. So.
And the project, it is spanning each genre. So it's ballet, modern, tap, and musical theater.
I'm excited. I mean, I've seen some of the dance videos that have come out so far, and they look great. I mean, clearly you guys are paying a lot of attention to like the framing and the editing and the sound. So I'm really excited about it. So are there any other performances or opportunities, information that you want to share about the Dance Institute that maybe people aren't already aware of or may not be aware of very generally?
We have space in a few classes, specifically our entry-level classes. So creative dance 1 and 2, pre-ballet 1 and 2 have space. And the age range of those off the top of my head starts at 5, although creative dance starts at 4.5. So it spans like a 4.5 to 7 age range. And so if people are interested, we'll probably start enrolling new students in January. Usually we're a year-round program and don't necessarily enroll new students, but because of the structure of the year, we're using it as an opportunity to reach out to some young students.
Yeah, that's a great idea. And if you guys have any information that you want me to share, I can post that on the screen after this interview. I can also share it by email after the event. So
I think Will's doing a special event or seminar on the 5th of December.
Yeah, we're doing it's a parent info session on early childhood pathways. So it's all about where you go once you age out of early childhood, because there's so many options on campus. So
I think Victoria Dobson's going to participate in that. So that's for creative dance, and Sheila Gonzalez might participate. She's pre-ballet.
Okay, great. That's awesome. So anyone interested can also attend that session for a little bit more. Okay. Well, thank you guys for making time for this interview today. Good luck with everything, and I look forward to Virtual Nutcracker.
Thank you.
Thank you.
A special thanks to the dance office for allowing me to crash their virtual office hours this past week. So now let's take a look at a short video of some of our ballet students from this past summer performing the choreography that they learned with faculty member Catherine Calgill. So now we're going to hear a little bit from our AV manager, Francesco Perlangeli, on the cabling projects taking place in the Grand Building that will allow for a more seamless practice and performance experience for musicians once we're able to return to campus.
My name is Francesco Perlangeli. I'm the AV manager at the Colburn School. It's been an exciting time since March. A lot of thought and research has been put into new technology use and applications just to get around the limitations of communicating over the internet and performing over the internet. So my team and I are really excited to, being able to help with the installation of the new wiring and use of new technology. We are in Mammon Hall at the Colburn School. Today is a big day. We are preparing for the installation of a lot of new wiring, including new fiber connections, video connections, and data connections across the upper level floor of the Grand Building at the Colburn School. The new wiring will allow several kinds of technologies to be integrated seamlessly. Fiber connections can be used for a number of applications, from digital video to digital audio, networked audio, and data and whatnot. So very easily with simple adapters, we can use cameras, audio interfaces very seamlessly at a moment's notice. The main goal of the new wiring project is to allow all the rooms located on this floor to be connected together in real time. This can also be integrated with the existing live streaming system or is currently in use in Zipper Hall. Well, on this level, we will have Maven Hall, Grand Rehearsal Hall, which is next door, Dance Studios A and B, Maven Hall Green Room, and all this will be connected together with the Zipper Hall machine room. So all the wirings will convey to the machine room, and from there things can be routed and patched as needed, and all spaces can be connected seamlessly. So the ability to reach all these spaces will allow our current remote controlled camera system in Zipper Hall to tie into Grand Rehearsal Hall next door and this room, Maven Hall, and have musicians rehearse and perform in separate spaces while being able to monitor each other. All this will allow musicians to perform in separate spaces while being able to listen to each other and look at each other on a screen in real time. This is really a key element for skilled musicians or performers, dancers of any level, to be able to perform properly. Timing is key, and we all know these days, by using Zoom, it's basically not possible to play together at a distance. Internet latency is a serious obstacle, and it creates real problems of especially timing and performance. Feel dynamics are a big challenge over the internet. So all this goes away when musicians just have access to the spaces. They can simply flip a power switch and everything comes on automatically, and they're connected instantly with the adjacent rooms. At that point, they can just rehearse normally, almost if they were in the same space.
Anything else you want to say? That's great.
Yeah, lunch!
Woo!
So as I mentioned earlier, the LA Opera premiered its production of The Anonymous Lover on November 14th, and that was done in partnership with the Colburn School. All of their rehearsals and recordings took place here. And they've put together a little behind-the-scenes video about what that production was like, and I wanted to share it with you so you had a better sense of everything going on campus.
We are presenting Anonymous Lover here at the Colburn School of Music. We've got a long and successful history with the Colburn School. When we decided we needed to do some programming to replace the programming we unfortunately lost due to the pandemic, we chose to come over here and rekindle our relationship with the Colburn. COVID has affected everything we do, as I'm sure is the case for people in every industry essentially. Live performance is, other than what we're doing here, is basically impossible. And so we refocused our energies onto producing just a live performance that would be streamed out to our patrons.
Bruce, Pablo, and I had a first Zoom meeting, and then we talked about the world now more than the piece itself in the beginning, and I think that was actually quite refreshing.
A lot of the inspiration for the staging came from COVID-19 and restrictions that we have to adhere to so we can keep everybody safe at this time. So the production went through quite a few changes throughout the planning process.
In order to maintain physical distancing of the performers and of the orchestra, we had to do some very different things indeed. For instance, the orchestra we recorded 2 weeks before the streaming and made a recording. We recorded it in a large studio so that we could have the physical distancing needed for the players. In an orchestra, wind and brass instruments need much more physical distancing than string instruments, for instance. So we needed the largest rehearsal hall they have here at Colburn. So that is then played to the performers into their ears, into a small, what we call an in-ear monitor. It's just a small headphone that you don't really see very clearly on camera, so that they can hear the orchestra as they're singing.
That influenced a lot of the staging to keep people at a distance, to keep people safe. And then once it was clear that we couldn't have an audience, where it was like, great, let's use the entire building. Let's use the whole space. Let's use every bit of it that we can. So we can give people the proper space.
For instance, Maestro Conlon is in the very center of the audience seating area. Singers sing in different spots throughout the course of the evening, always are distanced, especially when they're singing appropriately from their colleagues.
For the set design, we try to make the most of our restriction, which was 15 feet around singers, and they cannot move. And they also cannot change positions back and forth into multiple different locations, because once they sing, we have to wait for a while for the particles to settle down. So rather than trying to hide that, I think we try to come up with a plan where it becomes a concept, and try to come up with a solution to have a emotional backdrop that can support but doesn't require physical movement or any kind of elaborate setups that some audiences might be familiar seeing in opera.
I think what we've done is to use the restrictions as part of the aesthetic, as opposed to it becoming a restriction or using it as a disclaimer. The restrictions are part of the story and how we're going to tell the story. Lighting, I think we're trying to use lighting specifically color and light much more in a much more overt and bold way than you would normally see on an opera stage.
That this production is completely unique to anything that we've ever done. The production teams, creative teams, the performers, the orchestra, all of those people, all of us at LA Opera are hugely proud of the work that's been put in such difficult circumstances.
And it's been a joy, and it's been very special because we're making something in a very unusual circumstance. So as much as it's not easy, I think the joy from it was bigger, and I hope that would come across through the final product as well. Get your headphone, please.
And that's last virtual office hours for November. Thank you so much for joining us, and thank you so much to our guests for taking the time to speak to us. I wish you all a safe and restful holiday break next week, and I'll meet you back here on Saturday, December 19th at noon for our big 2020 winter concert. I'll play you out with a short video of Suzuki guitar student Joachim Park performing Allegro by Shinichi Suzuki. Take care.